Service delivery is the single biggest driver behind the success of any agency. If you have the best results in the game, you will never struggle with getting clients because you have crazy case studies and tons of social proof to show you. You'll never churn clients because who wants to leave an agency that's making them bank? And number three, you'll get more referrals than you know what to do with because 95% of business owners know at least 5 other business owners like themselves. So the point here is if you nail this, nothing else matters. Literally, you can have shit sales, you can have shit internal operations, but if you nail the service delivery, you will earn money with your agency. So before I get into how you actually deliver the service, let me show you guys some of the results I've been able to generate for my clients in my agency. We scaled this eCom brand from 360K a month to 1.5 mil a month. Here are the Shopify screenshots. We scaled this eCom brand from 126K a month to 370K a month. Here again, the screenshots. We scaled this eCom brand from 206,000 euros to 467,000 euros a month. And the account we are currently managing spend $2.5 million a month. We're a Meta partner. We've received all of the best certifications. We've spent more than $15 million on our account. And in my own agency, optimizing the service delivery scaled me from 10K a month to 50K a month in only 5 months. So in January of 2024, we were at 10K a month. And by July, we'd already hit our first 50K a month. And again, the only thing we changed was optimizing the service delivery. So let's jump into it. I'll be going through 5 parts: the fundamentals, the ideation, the production of ads, the media buying, and lastly, actually going through the ads manager and launching them in the correct way. But let's start with the fundamentals. So paid ads consists 20% of the actual media buying, the technical stuff you do in the account, and 80% is down to the creatives you use, the pictures or the videos you use in your ads. And that's exactly what I'm going to focus on in this video, the creative strategy behind creating converting ads. The anatomy of an ad looks like this. The first top 20% of the ad is the ad copy. Then you have the creative. Again, creative is the most important part of this. And then you have ad copy, which also plays a small part, but it's not crucial. Again, if you nail the actual image or the video, the ad copy doesn't matter. And the process of producing creatives is called creative strategy. I've created this document called Core Beliefs around creative strategy, where I basically summarize this entire video in one document. I'm not going to read through it right now, but if you want access to this document, just DM me on Instagram and I'll shoot it over to you. Let's keep going. Creative strategy consists of 2 different parts. You have the ideation and you have the production. So first you have to create the idea, understand the data, figure out what you are going to be creating, and then actually go and create it. So ideation consists of analyzing previous creatives, ideating new creatives, and briefing them out. And don't worry, I'm going to be going into detail on every single one of these steps. I'm not just running through it this quick. And then production is actually producing it, getting it approved by your client, and doing revisions if necessary. Yes, it may sound like there are many steps involved, but it's not complicated. So just stick with me. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly how you do it. Lastly, you have the media buying, just launching the ads, testing them, and then scaling the winners. Again, we'll be going through all of it in a second. So let's jump into the creative strategy, and the first part is the ideation. How do we analyze the ads we already have? How do we come up with new ads to know what to actually create? Well, it happens in 2 different ways. First of all, when you just onboard the client, you fill out an expansive creative strategy one-pager where you document everything about their offer and product, their competitors, some social listening, going into forums, asking Reddit answers, all of that good stuff. Let me show you guys what that looks like. So it's a Notion document. You just duplicate this document and you begin filling it out. You fill out the data from the ad account, you go through their offer and their product, you understand about the brand. Where does the brand come from? What does it stand for? How is the product made? The goal is to understand the brand better than the actual founder does. Then you do some competitor research. So you list out all the brands and the websites that are competitors to this product that you're working with. You do some foreplay research. Foreplay is an app where you can compile tons and tons of different ads into different, you can call them Pinterest boards or mood boards to have inspo for future ads. So you go through the competitors and add their winning ads in your foreplay board. Then you do some social listening, and this is key. Not a lot of people actually do this, but the idea with social listening is that you want to be talking in your ads in the exact words that the customers use. And the way to do that is to go out and figure out what people are actually saying. So you go on Reddit, for example, and you look up weight loss pill. Again, I don't like working like with weight loss products and stuff like that, but let's say it's a weight loss pill that you're working with. You go on Reddit, you search up that specific pill, and then you'll have different threads of people actually talking about the product. And then you take specific quotes that those people use and use that in your ads, because that's exactly how your customers talk. You want to be speaking in your customer's language, and based on that, you create a persona. So you give it a name, you figure out what their skepticism or problem is, you figure out how they discover your product, the feature or benefit they're looking for, which case study or testimonial they would give you or would get them over the line, which new state they would achieve by buying your product, and the call to action they need to actually buy the product. So for most e-com brands, that's just shop now, but for some it's, apply now or learn more if it's a long sales cycle. You get the point. So this is the creative strategy one pager you fill out at the beginning of the partnership when onboarding new clients. If you already have some clients, you can still go through and fill it out right now to get this system going. But for the future, every time you onboard a new client, make sure to fill out this creative strategy one pager. And again, if you want access to any of the documents that I show throughout this video, DM me on Instagram. There's a link to my Insta account down in the description, and I'll shoot it over to you. The goal with this onboarding creative strategy one pager is to give you a deep understanding of the client so that you don't have to constantly refer back to this document or do research every single time you want to create new ads. You already know everything you need to know about the brand, but then you also have the reference documents. If you want to share it with someone else, or you haven't created ads for a couple of weeks and your understanding begins going weak, you already have this document. You just look through it and you get refreshed on everything you need to know to actually create ads for this brand. Then we do weekly ideation. So we've done this one time onboarding. You don't do it weekly, you just do it one time when you onboard the client, but then you do weekly analysis and briefing. So the way this works is that you analyze motion, you analyze the ad accounts, and you fill out the weekly creative analysis doc. So Motion is an app that I haven't heard too many people talk about. It is very prevalent in the creative strategy space, but again, people just don't understand the value of creative strategy when they are running an ads agency. So I'm introducing you to it now. It is a creative analytics software. It's written motionapp.com. I'll have to blur out quite a bit of stuff here, but point is I want to show you guys how it works. So let's open one of the accounts, this one for example. On the left, you'll get a ton of different reports. So you can create your own reports. You get 5-6 reports as default by Motion, and you go in here and it's going to filter it by the best creative. So you connect your Meta Ads account, it pulls all the data, it pulls all the creatives, all the numbers you can't even get in the ads manager, and it shows you them here. So just by looking at this report, we see that this one ad is our best performing ad right now. It spent 1.3K, it's a 2.2 ROAS, it has a $22 CPA, and we would immediately begin ideating on this one. It makes analyzing the data so much easier than having to look through the pretty complicated ads manager. So really recommend getting Motion. It is pretty pricey when you begin getting more clients, but at that point you're already making a lot of money, so it doesn't really matter. So get this thing immediately, start with a free trial, understand how it works, and begin analyzing it weekly to figure out which creatives work, and most importantly, why they work. So now we have this creative, we see that it's performing well. Why does it perform well? Well, obviously because it is for a sale. So we have a sale ending the 31st of October. Today is the 23rd of October. So of course people see that they want to begin buying. So not too many insights to collect here because it's pretty self-explanatory, but in other cases you can dive pretty deep on why that ad is performing. Is it the hook? Is it the body? Is it the CTA? Is it the overall angle? So many things you can dive deep into. Then you also analyze the ad accounts. So in the ad accounts, you get, the campaign structure, the ad account structure, the ad structure. That way you can see if any specific ad sets are working well, or if any specific campaigns are working well, because Motion only shows you the specific ads, but it doesn't show you how they're structured in the account. So you can get some more insights by analyzing the ad account, and then you fill out the weekly creative analysis doc. And again, I have a template for this document. It looks like this. So at the top of this document, you have an evergreen database. So this database carries over into every new weekly creative analysis. You create a new document, but this database will be updated in all of them. That's why it's called an evergreen database. In here, you add in every single one of your clients, their priority level. And if you have different categories, you can create different categories here. So let's say you work with pet store brands and with beauty products for some reason, then category 1 can be beauty products and category 2 can be the pet store brand, so that you can differentiate which category each of these brands actually belongs in. Then you have the net new briefing, so that you understand if you are in the process of briefing new creatives right now or not. In the beginning, this may seem a little extra, like you are adding too many layers to this creative process, but trust me, when you have 10 plus clients, you begin forgetting stuff, you begin forgetting who you are making briefs for, who you're not making briefs for. So implement this proper system immediately. Then you have the iteration briefing. So are you briefing out new iterations? Again, same as the left one, just that net new is creating completely new statics, while iterating is just taking what's already working and slightly tweaking it. You write out what kind of creative volume you're looking at in the next 7 days, any notes you might have, write out how many videos you are producing, and then you have a couple more fields to fill out if it's relevant, but it's not always. You just have it here so that you can keep track of every single thought and plan you have for every single client in one database. Then we actually jump into the weekly analysis, and this is the fun part. This is where you do the strategizing and the analyzing and the ideation. You write out again all of your clients down here in the database. You write out their top priorities. So I have kept one of our actual clients that we've done an analysis for in this document to show you what it looks like. So for this client, we had as a priority to keep the weekly cadence. We wanted to reskin the fatigued winners. We wanted to push UGC and hold Auto Shield until the landing page and tracking stabilize. So very key points. This is something we have to keep in mind when briefing out the creatives. In the beginning, it's not going to be as complex for you as it is for us. In the beginning, it can be as simple as, produce at least 5 creatives, or produce at least 7 creatives, or do 4 iterations and 3 net new statics, stuff like that. Just things you have to keep in mind before you actually get into the rest of the process. Then based on what you found in motion and in the ad account, you write out the learnings. So we see that V47, which is one of our videos, video #47, the 47 is the ID, got 0 spend because everything got paused probably right after getting launched. So this immediately tells the creative strategist that this ad wasn't tested properly. Either we can get it relaunched or we can make an iteration out of it. Same with number 44, and same with number 46, and same with number 45 and 46. So 4 ads in total haven't really been tested and need to be retested. This is again written by our creative strategist. You can see kind of the ideation process that it goes through just by looking at this text. Then based on that, he briefs out the iteration. So he wants to iterate on U number 20, which is a UGC video with the ID 20 with testing different parts separately, and iterate on the UGC video number 18 hook to static, and the UGC video number 20 hook. So very concise, very simple. When I iterate on this video, do this, add a new hook or add a new body, whatever the iteration you are doing. And again, the iteration comes from the analysis you do. So if you analyze this ad, you see that it has a strong hook rate, but that the actual click-through rate is pretty bad. That means that either your CTA sucks or you have a bad body, which isn't keeping people watching throughout the entire video. So you can take the same ad with the same hook, just replace the body and just replace the CTA, and that way find a winner, which he is iterating, which he is briefing out in this iterations box, just describing what the losers are so that you don't do the same thing again next week. Lastly, you have the net new briefing idea. So this is where you have to get creative. This is all just based on data. Iterations usually just based on data, while with net new, you have to look at what's working, you have to look at what's not working, and come up with completely new ideas. You could use ChatGPT for this, but ChatGPT is pretty ass at being creative and coming up with new ideas, so I really wouldn't do it. You can use it for iterations, but don't use it for net new briefing. You have to actually be creative and use your brain for once, which people aren't doing enough in today's society. So you sit down, you look at what's working, and you just get creative. You let the thoughts flow. You can pull out a physical book and you begin thinking, okay, this angle worked, this angle worked, this hook worked. What can we do? How can we approach this ad in a new way? And you just sit there. You don't need more than 5 minutes. If you are in the flow, if you have the creative juices flowing, it's a simple process. You just write it all out. As you can see here, he has briefed out a new Snapchat style static with short concrete results hooks. Super simple, but I know that at this point it's one of our best performing ads because this was written a couple of weeks ago. A sticky note concept. So creators shoot images with empty notes and we add the copy on top. Again, amazing idea. And just statics with price increase angle. Again, 5 pieces of that, and boom, in 5 minutes you've briefed out a ton of new ads. This is how you do the weekly analysis and weekly briefing and iteration and ideation of the ads. And the point of this whole process is to understand what worked and why. You want to understand what didn't work and why. That's also important. And you want to ideate the next batch of briefs. So now we have a list of ideas that we're actually going to be briefing out, creating briefs for, and sending either to a graphic graphic designer and video and sending either to our graphic designer and video editor, or producing ourselves if you are still responsible for producing the creatives in your agency, depending on which stage you're at with your own agency. This is important that you do it in one single go, because if you sit down, you do a little bit of thinking, you do a little bit of analysis, and then you go, scroll a little TikTok, and then you go have some lunch, go to the gym, come back, you've already lost all of these creative juices. So make sure that when you are doing these weekly creative analysis, sit down and just sit there for a couple hours, do it in one go, no breaks, don't go to the toilet, just let the creative juices flow, leverage that. Is going to make it so much simpler and so much faster than if you're going to be cutting it up in to different blocks. Now we've ideated, we've created new ideas for creatives. Now we actually have to produce it. This is where it gets technical and where you have to actually do stuff with your hands, not just think. So briefing, before we actually get into the production process, we need to create a brief. So now we have this idea, we want to create this Snapchat style static, but what's the actual brief for it? What kind of format do we need? What's the size of it? How is it supposed to look? What kind of copy are we going to be using in it? And yes, it may sound kind of redundant having to create a brief beforehand, but it will save you so much time in the long run, because first you brief out everything, you create very specific step-by-step guidelines for how each creative is supposed to be made, and then you just produce it. So you do first the ideation, then the briefing, then the production. You don't jump between the stages, because that's just going to slow you down. Even if in this case you are adding an additional step, it's also required when you begin getting a team on board. So why not just build a proper system to begin with? So I use Asana for task management in my own agency. The static briefing and video briefing differs. So depending on if you're briefing out new statics or new videos, you're going to be using two different forms, but I'm using forms. That's a key feature of Asana that we are using basically every single day. I have created this new form that when I want to initiate a new static, I just fill this thing out. I'm going to run through it right now with you. First of all, we start with the request title. So we have very specific naming that we use in our ad, so that it's always easy to find back to the ad. Just like I showed you in the weekly creative analysis doc, I said, okay, for this client, we have the UGC number 49, and our creative strategist is able to pull it up in 2 seconds because he knows exactly which video I'm referring to. We're not just saying video 14, hook for whatever in this naming. We have very specific IDs that tie back to every single ad. So for that, we use this very, very simple Google Sheet for naming. You put in the client initials. So let's say the initials of this client is AB, that we are briefing out the static for. The ID of this ad is 46. So let's say the previous one was 45. You just take 45 plus 1, you create 46. And then you have the description. So very simple description of this ad. Let's say it's going to be a Snapchat static. There we go. We copy this thing. We paste it in here. We enter our name. In my case, it's Alex, so that the person who receives the brief, in my case, it's our graphic designer, will know who to go to with questions if something is unclear. It basically never happens because this static request form is so good. It always gives them all the information they need, but you never know. Sometimes they might have questions. So main headline. This is the main headline that's going to be on the creative, apparently enough. So let's say it's going to be, say 50% off this week. For example, our client is running a 50% sale this week. So we add that as the main headline. Additional copy, if you have any more CTAs or USPs, we can add them here. If we have any specific images that we want the graphic designer to use, we can add them in here. So let's just use a sticky Snapchat style ad. We just look it up on Google to give him kind of a suggestion of what it should look like. The idea is that we want to have like this text bar that is usually in Snapchat. All right, so we found this ad. So we just copy the link to it, copy link address. We paste that into our static request form. If you have any specific ads you want to be copying or you want your graphic designer to be copying, you can paste them in here. Then we use different styles of statics or static styles to later be able to search back and filter based on those statics. So let's see, we see that a pattern is emerging. 60% of our winners are from a specific style of static. We begin doing more of that, but to be able to do that, you need that data. You need to be tagging those ads. And we also use the static styles to actually assign them to different employees. So we have a couple different employees and we don't want to be sending the ads randomly, like every second one to every other graphic designer, because we want some kind of system and we want people to be working on whatever they're best at. So we have different static styles that match our graphic designer's strengths that we then use to actually send tasks to those graphic designers. We have one we call polished. We have one we call emo, which is this like darker kind of minimalistic style. We have one we call American, which is like very in your face, you know, typical American ads. So we have about 10 different static styles. Those are also implemented here in Asana. So you just select which one you want your graphic designer to actually follow, and it will tell them a lot about what you actually desire with this specific ad, and they'll follow it. Plus, it's also going to be used to correctly assign in Asana, which we'll get to in a second, all of the technical, you know, setup needed to actually make this stuff work. Reference guidelines, if you want the person to copy the reference ad exactly, you can select that here. If not, you can just tell them to use it as a suggestion. For the copy, same thing again. Do you want it to be final, or is it okay to tweak the copy? Angle and concept, if you have any specific angle and any specific concept that you are going to be using in the ad, you can list those out here. So the angle could be buy the skincare to look 10 years younger, while the concept could be us versus them. So you are comparing yourself to competitors, for example. That could be an angle and a concept. If you have anything specific in mind, you add it here. Then we add the due dates. This one is interesting because we've had some issues with due dates not being followed and people not actually understanding exactly how due dates work. Asana also has this interesting system where people usually filter by tasks that are either due today or before today. So we needed this to somehow appear in people's calendars and still give them the ability to manage their own to-do. So the solution is to always give a start and an end date. So the start date and the end date is just the period of time in which the task can be completed. So let's say this is a medium urgency task. I want it done in about a week. So today is Sunday the 1st. I would put the date interval as about 4th until Monday the week after. So you have this week, so you have this window of about 6-7 days that the person can complete the task in, and then it's up to them how they want to actually, you know, manage their to-do to make it happen. You give them the freedom, but at the same time you give very clear priorities. Okay, this has to be done during this period, this has to be done during this period. Just makes your life as a manager much easier. You can also give it a priority, which you should always do. Again, just communicate a bit more about how much you would like the person to prioritize this task and to keep it as a note to yourself. Which platforms the static is for, this is needed for when you're actually developing it, to know which formats we need. Do we need standing? Do we need horizontal? Whatever, usually it's just Meta, but if you have any other platforms, you can select those here. Client, select which client this static is for, and then you put in the creative's ID. So going back to the naming we created earlier, let's say it was S27, you just put S27 here. If you have any other comments, you paste those in here and then you click submit. It might seem like there are quite a few steps here, but once you get used to this briefing process, it becomes pretty quick, and trust me, it makes your systems and operations so much smoother when everything is happened and you know, like tightly defined packages. Everyone knows exactly what kind of brief they're gonna get. They know exactly where to look in that brief to find the images they have to use or the text they have to use. They know exactly how to deliver it for approval. It just creates an actual business and creates a business that's scalable and exitable at some point. Then we also have a very similar type of request form for the videos. I'm not gonna go through the entire thing here because it's very similar. It's just adapted to actually support videos and not statics, because videos usually need a bit more information. They need like different timestamps, and then they need more explanation about the idea. Usually I have a couple different hooks as well, which needs to be explained, but the concept is the exact same. So how does all of this magic actually work in Asana? We've submitted this brief. It's now been sent to Asana. Who is it assigned to? What's happening with it? Who's going to be responsible for moving it further down the pipeline? Everything is explained in this creative development document. So this is the exact SOP we use in my own agency to explain how this process works to new employees. First of all, when people go into Asana, into the creative development dashboard, I'm going to go through it in Asana in a second. I just have to explain the system first. They have a couple different filters. So completion status has to be set to incomplete tasks. Of course, we don't want to be working on tasks that have already been completed. Status is not canceled because that is a status we have. Sometimes we cancel tasks, like the client decided, okay, they don't want it at this angle, or we found something else, we just cancel it instead of deleting it. So status is not canceled. And sometimes some employees want some custom filters if they only work on specific clients, let's say, or if one of our graphic designers only works on specific styles, they can add those as filters here. So once the main, filter setup is done, they only see the tasks related to them and they are ready to rock. So some basic principles for how this creative development process works. This is going to be pretty complex and pretty explanatory, but trust me, this stuff has taken me many months to set up. I'm giving it to you guys in about 10 minutes of talking. So if you want to copy the systems, now is your chance. So first principle is never move a task between the main 5 sections explained below manually. The only way a task moves through the pipeline is by changing the status, and then the section will update automatically based on the status. So let me show you guys what that actually means. So if we go into Asana, if we go into creative development, we have different statuses, as you can see. So we have ideation, canceled, assigned, brief in progress, ready for translation, coordination with creators, whatever. And the only way those tasks move from one section to the next is by changing the status. So we never drag and drop tasks. It only happens this way. So let me show you guys. Let's do this one. Right now it's in revision necessary after review. So let's put it to ready for client approval and see what happens. Give it a second. As you can see here, it's now running an automation, a rule, and boom, it has appeared here now. So let me just double check that this is the right task that I just moved. Yes, sir. So I'm just going to move it back to not mess up the entire system, but you get the point. So a new task is added on the top. It starts in the ideation phase, and then each person begins actually changing the status as they are completing the task, and based on that status, it's moved down into the different sections and different people are assigned to it. So the assignees are automatic as well. While it's in the brief in progress stage, for example, it's assigned to our creative director Oscar. When it's then moved to production and it's ready to be produced, it's moved to one of our graphic designers, again depending on the style. When it goes to client approval, it's sent to our assistant, who then sends it to our clients to actually approve it. And all of this happens through rules. So as you can see, we have 23 different rules here on the right. So change section to production, for example, when the status is set to editing or revision necessary after review, or it's set to send for subtitle creation, it's moved to the section production. So it's always being automatically followed up by Asana. Next, each step, as I said, has automatic assignee updates. If our team members want changes to those assignee updates, they submit me a form. So all task management happens through Asana. I've created a specific form our employees can fill out to actually submit a problem to me, and I will then fix it. So this is considered a problem for the problem report. Again, just makes your life much easier as a manager when everything is landing in your Asana and you just go through and check off those tasks. Launch date is when the creative has to be launched. So Asana has this native due date feature. We use both the due date and we have a custom field called launch date on the right here, as you can see here. So this is the final date by which the task has to actually be launched, and then we can use the due date to actually shuffle it around, use it as like kind of a priority list for when this next stage has to be completed, but there's always a copy of when the task has to be completed. Next, the person making the task is responsible for adding the correct sprint and ID. So here I'm just explaining the sprint and the ID system that I just explained earlier with how the V hashtag or S hashtag system work. Previously we had an ID system. We've now transitioned to this V and S system, and here is how the pipeline works. So as you can see, we have quite a few different statics in production right now, videos as well included in this pipeline. So how do we actually keep track of stuff? How do we know where in the pipeline it is? Well, the pipeline is split up into 5 different sections. The first section is the ideation, where we come up with the idea, we create the just general outline for what this specific creative is going to be like. Then we have the brief section, where our creative strategist actually creates the brief, makes sure that they are ready to go in Asana for production. Section number 3 is production. So when it's being produced by one of our graphic designers or the video editors, it goes in here. Then it goes out for review, where it's being sent to the client and it's being double checked by our creative strategist to make sure that we don't have any errors or issues in the final static. And lastly, launch. So So when it goes to the media buyers, to actually launch it in the ads manager. Within here, we have a couple different statuses to, again, even more delineate exactly where each creative is. So when it's in the ideation status, it's an idea for a creative. When it's canceled, we won't be moving forward with this creative. When it's assigned, a person, usually our creative strategist, has been assigned to create this idea but hasn't started working on it yet. You know, pretty self-explanatory, but again, very important to have these systems in place and have these solid SOPs the way we have in my own agency, to actually be able to go back and explain how the system works and understand and, you know, refresh your own mind, because I have a lot of shit going on a daily basis. Sometimes I forget how I've set the system up myself. I go back, I read through it, and I understand it. I'm not going to go through every single status right now, but here, just scrolling down slowly, you can pause the video and read through those if you'd like. New tasks can enter this whole creative development process in 3 different ways. First of all, our employees can submit an idea for a video for the creative strategist to expand on and actually brief out and create that video idea, which happens through the video request form I showed you guys earlier. Next, we can create a brief directly for the graphic designer, bypassing the creative strategist, which happens with the static request form. And lastly, the creative strategist creates briefs on a set cadence. As we discussed earlier, doing this weekly analysis and briefing stuff out in Asana, that's the only 3 ways tasks will ever enter this creative development pipeline. There is no other way. This is just for our personal team. If they have any questions, they can ask me. Again, we always encourage our employees to use the problem reports, because it makes my life so much easier when stuff just comes into Asana. All of the problems, I solve them. I don't have to chat back and forth in, you know, Slack, and then make sure to add it to not forget it, and then forget half of it, and then get angry messages later. Everything is neat and organized. We have a very similar version to this creative development process for UGC as well. UGC has a slightly different process, because there you need to communicate with creators to actually produce the content before you can begin chopping it up and making videos out of it. But other than that, it's the exact same process. So we just have a duplicate of this creative development pipeline in Asana called UGC development, just slightly tweaked, but 95% is the exact same. And then the static styles I just explained to you guys. So this is the Asana setup. This is how it works. If you take action and if you're ready to actually scale your agency, I would expect you to have this system in place tomorrow. I've had many coaching calls with agency owners that are actually going to succeed in this business. They get the system from me and they have it implemented within, you know, like 12 or 24 hours. So take action on these things. Don't just watch this video through, yeah, that looks interesting, and then go about your day. Actually implement this stuff, because this is what allowed me to scale to 100K a month, building an actual business, building actual systems, but we keep rolling. So how do we go about the actual production of the new briefs that we have just created? Well, again, differs based on if you are producing a static or a video. Let's go through the static first. We use Figma to produce statics. Very simple program to use, easy to learn, much better than Photoshop. So the way we do it is that we create a new file and we use pre-made template for our static. So in the beginning, you have to kind of design everything from scratch, but with every new static, you have a new static that you can use as a template. So begin adding every single new static that you create to this template library that is exclusive to your agency. And then later down the line, you can just go into that library and select specific statics you like and just begin creating copies of those over again. So this is a batch of statics we created for one of our clients recently. You go into Figma, you create a new file, you use the naming from the brief. Again, remember, this is an ecosystem. Everything has to be connected. So you've created the brief. That brief has a specific naming sequence. You use that naming in the actual Figma file and you begin creating based on that brief. So these were 3 concepts we briefed out in one static request to our graphic designer. He went in, he created those in the right aspect ratios. This is going into Meta, but as you can see, all of the actual information fits in the square in the middle, because sometimes Meta crops in on certain placements. So we want to make sure that stuff isn't being cropped out. Everything is kept in mind and everything is designed based on the brief that we have created. It's then sent to client approval, which we'll get to in a second. For video, it's slightly more complex because it requires actually, you know, sorting through content, and it's just more of a time-consuming process to actually edit a video versus a static. But But the way it works is that our video editor goes through the content library. So every single client has some kind of content library. Maybe it's on Google Drive, maybe it's on Dropbox, whatever. Finds the relevant content and downloads it to his computer. He adds it all to a proper file structure. So this will depend on how many clients you have, if they're in different categories, what kind of clients those are. But you just want to make sure that you have a proper file structure on your PC. So the way I would do it is that I would have one main folder on my desktop called editing. Within there, I would have different subfolders for every single client. And then within those, you would have the different specific videos. So ID 27, ID 28, ID 29. Again, using the naming that we created earlier to actually create a proper file structure on your computer. Then you go ahead and chop it up. You add effects, you add subtitles, pretty simple stuff. Don't overthink this production step. Stuff doesn't have to look super polished. We've seen that ugly ads in many cases perform better than those super polished ads. So in the beginning, it's all about volume. It's all about hitting the right angles with the right concepts. This design itself doesn't matter that much. Same goes for the videos as well. So chop it up and add some effect. Make sure that you don't have any like bloopers and like very obvious issues, but it doesn't have to look like it's produced by, you know, like a $10 million studio to have it convert well. Then it's been moved down the creative pipeline. So as you can remember, it was first added to the ideation stage, then the briefing stage, then the production stage. Now we are on the review stage where it has to be actually reviewed by yourself and by the client. So you go in, you make sure if you have graphic designers that they have done a good job, that everything is up to standards, the briefs have been followed, and then you send it to client for approval. So you send the Figma or the frame link to the client, you get their feedback. We use Slack for all communication with clients, so we just drop it in the chat there. Hey, we have new statics or a new video for approval. Let us know what you think. You get their feedback, and if they have any feedback, which they usually don't, but if they do, you go back and do a round of revisions. So let's say it's changing up some subtitles or changing one of the colors, whatever it is, you do those changes, and then you repeat this process with sending it to them for approval again and making sure that it's all good. Once you have approval, we go into the last step of this whole creative development process, which is actually uploading it to Meta. So you export the final files from whatever frame or Figma, whatever, if it's a static or video, then you upload it to the Meta creative library and you let the media buyer know that it has now been uploaded and it's ready to be launched. It's important to remember here that these steps, the client approval and the uploading, are VA activities. So if you're watching this video, chances are you're already making at least a couple grand a month. You have a couple clients. You should already have a VA that does all of this stuff for you. So make sure to assign the stuff to your VA. You don't want to be the one doing all the technical stuff, the manual labor, sending it to clients for approval, uploading it. These are VA activities. So we've gone through the creative development, a lot of talking from my side, but do you see how proper everything is done? This is by design. We're building a real business from day one. Everything is proper. We have systems for every single little step. Everything works as a cohesive big environment and ecosystem where the naming is followed through, where the briefing is used to make the production stage as smooth as possible. Everything works together. It's like cogs that have been oiled up and lubed up and they're working properly. They're turning each other and yeah, whatever. I just love systems. I understand how important it is to have proper systems to make an agency work. So I want you to have that same appreciation for systems after you leave this video. Then we actually have to launch these creatives. So we've done the most important part with developing the creatives. We have the creatives. How do we actually launch them? Yes, you can fuck this up if you're so bad at this. If you do some bullshit in the ads manager, you can still make some amazing creatives not work. It's difficult, but I still want you guys to do the media buying part well as well, even though the creative is what matters the most. So let's jump into the media buying. I'll go through the ads manager shortly, but first I want to cover some basics for you to understand how the algorithm works, how testing works, how scaling works, to give you all the core information you need to succeed with the technical media buying stuff. So the algorithm, the meta algorithm, how does it work? Well, the advertisers are the customers. So you are the customer of Meta. Whatever you're doing in the ads manager, launching ad, you are the customer, and then the product is the actual user. I need you to understand that you are the customer and the user is the product. So the people actually scrolling on Instagram or scrolling on Facebook and then clicking those ads, those are products that are being sold to you, who is the advertiser. And Meta's goal is to keep users on the platform for as long as possible. So that's why bad ads that cause a bad user experience give you a high CPM. So the longer people stay on the platform, the longer they keep scrolling, the more ads they'll be able to click, and the more money Meta will get paid, because remember, Meta is a CPM platform. They get paid every single time an ad is viewed, not necessarily clicked. So they want people to stay on the platform for as long as possible. And when you cause people to click off the platform by having shit ads that aren't relevant for them, Meta will charge you a premium in terms of a higher CPM. So that's where a high CPM comes from. You made an ad that doesn't resonate with your audience. Next, you need to understand that the content does the targeting. Previously, like 5 years ago, the targeting you put in Meta was very, very important. It was important that you had the right age demographics, that you only targeted men or only targeted women. Today, that doesn't really matter anymore. Right now in Meta, the most important thing is the content. Meta understands your content piece and then uses that to actually target the ads. So broad is actually the go-to way to set up the targeting in your ads, and then just allow Meta to do the targeting through the actual content. Lastly, you need creative diversity to serve every user with the right ad for them. This is a development that happened this summer of 2025, where Meta became much stricter with rewarding advertisers that have a lot of creative diversity and punishing advertisers that don't. So for Meta, it's now super important that you have a lot of different ads. And I'm not saying you have the same ad with different hooks. I'm talking completely different ads. One that is an us versus them ad targeting one specific pain point, and you have a different ad that targets a different pain with a different concept, just wildly different ads, because then Meta can pick and choose those specific ads for every specific person so that they get the most relevant experience possible. Again, they stay on the Meta platforms for as long as possible, and Meta makes as much money as possible. More variation equals more relevance, which equals lower ad cost, which equals a higher ROAS for you, which at the end of the day is what we are working towards here. So you need to understand how to work together with Meta here to make as much money as possible and to make Meta as much money as possible, because that's when they are going to actually reward you for your effort. We have two different campaign types once we actually get to the technical setup of the... So Meta has a couple different campaign types. You use them depending on if you are scaling or if you are testing. So you have an ABO, which is an ad set budget optimization campaign, where you give the budget to each ad set and then you force Meta to spend money on each ad set, whatever budget you gave it. This is good for testing and control, where you want to have a controlled testing structure where you spend $50 here, you spend $50 here, and you want to compare the results. While with a CBO, which is campaign budget optimization, you give a budget to the campaign as a whole, and then Meta will itself distribute to the different ad sets depending on which ad set it believes will give you the best results. And this is good for when you have combined tons of winning audiences and ads. So you've tested, you found, let's say 5, 6, 7 winners. You just want to generate as much money as possible. You put it all in a CBO, and then you allow Meta to spend money on whatever is going to bring you the highest return. So there isn't one campaign type that's better than the other one. You just use them for different purposes. Testing happens like this. So as I said, we test in ABOs. So you have different ad sets for every single test of yours. You give that ad set a budget. Ideally, you want to be spending at least 2-3 times the desired CPA on a daily basis. So let's say you're working with a product where the goal is to get purchases for $10. Ideally, you want to be spending at least $30 a day per ad set to give it enough budget, to give it enough learning, to not stretch out this whole testing process. And the important thing here to remember is to do A to Z testing and not A to B testing. So a lot of people do A/B testing, where you take one ad, you change the headline, or you change the picture in the background, or you change the CTA, you do like some small tweak and then launch that as a test. But with these new latest Meta updates, that isn't optimal anymore. You want to do completely wildly different testing. So you want to be testing one ad with one angle, with one concept, versus a different ad with a completely different angle, with a completely different person, different target audience. A to Z testing wildly different things. Testing these small tweaks doesn't really work anymore. That's a strategy from 2023, 2024. So make sure that when you are testing ads, they are very, very different. In terms of target, once you have spent 3 times your CPA target with no sales, so again, let's use the example of your goal is to get purchases for $10. Once you've spent $30 and if you have no purchases, it's a loser. You turn that ad off and you keep the other ones. And if you've spent 3 times CPA, you have gotten sales, but you are under the target, keep testing it. And if you are at 3 times CPA and you are hitting targets, you are getting the desired CPA, then that's a winner and you move it over into a winner stack in a CBO. Scaling, as I said, happens in CBOs. So what you do is you compile winner stacks with similar audiences. So let's say you've tested 15 different ads aimed at 3 different audiences with 5 ads going to each audience. You found the winner in the first batch, the third batch, but you didn't find any winners in the middle batch. You take those winners from those 2 batches and you put those in their own winner stack. So you don't begin mixing up the winning ads. Yes, both are winners, but they have different audiences. So you don't want to mix them up and begin showing the winners for one audience to another audience. So keep the audience separate, but take the winners, put them in a CBO and begin scaling that way. And remember, don't turn off ads that don't work in isolation. So what you will find with time is that you have a winner stack. Let's say it has 6, 7, 8 ads in it. Meta is spending most of the budget on 1 to 2 ads and it's giving the rest a little bit. That doesn't mean that those ads aren't working. You've proven that they do work through your testing, but now they are part of a bigger ecosystem. Each ad set is a small ecosystem in its own, where Meta can, for example, first show one of the ads as a top of funnel ad, then a middle funnel ad, and then actually get people to convert through a third ad. It builds up these funnels on its own in the ad sets using the ads that you give it. So again, just remember, the fact that one ad isn't working doesn't mean that it's a losing ad. You've already proven that it's working through your testing. It could just be part of a bigger ecosystem. So expect that if you turn it off, the rest of the ads could begin performing worse as well. So keep all of this in mind. And at the end of the day, Meta is a business. You need to understand that their goal is to make money and their recommendations serve this purpose. So whenever you are in the ads manager and Meta is recommending you to turn on this automation or bump the budgets here or turn off this ad, it's for them to earn more money because they're a business. They are optimizing the exact same way we are optimizing, like our outreach or our service delivery. Meta is optimizing their service delivery to make as much money as possible, and that's why they are a $1 trillion company. So let's jump into the ads manager and I'll show you exactly how this setup process works. Ideally, you should already know how this works if you already have a couple clients, but I'll show you how to set it up in the correct way. So you go into adsmanager.facebook.com. I'm not going to go all the way to, setting up the ad account because that's super basic. There are tons of videos about that on YouTube. And as I said, if you already have a couple of clients, you probably won't need this to be setting up completely new accounts. So what you do is that you go to the left here, you click create. In 95% of cases, we are going to be targeting sales because we want to be getting sales for our clients, whatever that is. If you are working with lead gen businesses, sometimes it leads, but usually sales. We click continue, load this screen, don't show again. We give this a name. So we want to have proper naming in our ads manager to be able to see exactly which ads are running where without having to look through our entire account structure, because with time, when you have 5, 6 campaigns, each campaign has a couple ads set, it does get pretty crowded. So you need a way to understand where stuff is without actually having to go through all of the campaigns manually. So this is going to be sales. It is going to be, I'm going to call this my agency's name curve to be able to delineate between the campaigns we've launched versus the ones that were in the account previously. For example, let's say this one is going to have a target CPA of $10. So I would go like this to communicate that, okay, here we are aiming at getting purchases for $10. And I would also say a little about the audience. So let's say this is going to be aimed at men, US 40 to 20 to 40, for example. Perfect. So now we know that, okay, this is a sales campaign. It's made by us. It has a target CPA of $10 and it's targeting men in the US that are 20 to 40 years old. Here we keep everything as is. Advantage plus catalog ads, no, keep that off. Campaign budget. So this is a testing campaign. So here we change it to be an ABO or an ad set budget. Very important to tick off this little thing. Meta always tries to force you to have this CBO type setup where they control the budget. And this is a new feature they have where even if it's an ABO, they still allow themselves to, distribute the budget slightly between the ad sets. We don't want that, so turn that off, A/B test, keep that turned off, audience segment reporting, rest we can just keep as is. Then we jump to the next stage, which is the actual ad set, where we will be setting up the targeting and then later adding the ads in here. So let's say that this is our first angle. So let's be a bit creative here. Let's say that this is a golf brand. We are targeting men in the US that are 20 to 40, and this one is aimed at people with short hands, for example. Let's say that these are clubs for golfers with short hands. So the main angle here in this ad set is going to be short hands. Again, just men US 20 to 40. Conversion location, website that is good. Here you select your pixel conversion event. I don't have any eCom stores connected to this ads manager, but when you are actually working with clients, you have a pixel where you have different events that are being fired. So here you select the purchase event. For that pixel attribution model, we use standard daily budget. As I said, we want to be getting purchases at $10. So this ad set should be spending at least 30 a day. So let's give it 30 a day. End date none, start date none. You can keep all of that as is. Now let's set up the actual audience. So right now we see that Advantage Plus is on. Again, Meta is trying to control stuff for us and decide for us where our ads are going to be shown. We don't want that. So location, we go in and do it manually. We type in United States, select that, remove the UAE here. Then we go into the demographics here. Age, we want to do, as we were planning, 20 to 40, 20 until 40. Genders, we're only going to be targeting men. Detailed targeting, as I discussed earlier, this was huge a couple years ago. When you were setting it up, you wanted to have very detailed targeting. Now in 2025, the creative does the targeting. So I basically never set up any interest type of targeting. The only time I do targeting is when I'm retargeting. So targeting people that have already been on the site, maybe already added to the shopping cart, and just getting them to convert. That's when you add your custom audience as a retargeting audience here. But other than that, I never add any interest. So let's keep it blank. You can also save this audience if it's an audience that you'll be using often, but I'm not going to be doing that. Pretty broad right now, as you can see, showing on the green, estimated audience size 33 million people. That's a lot, but of course it's going to narrow down a lot once we actually upload the ads and it begins understanding that we only want to target people who are interested in golf with our ads. So that's good. We can keep it for now, and then we go into the actual ad setup. So here you are going to be pasting in the naming that we created earlier in the creative development process. So it's going to be something like S23 American client. The client is, let's say, BB for this one. You get the point. This is going to be the naming that we've created earlier. So you just paste that in here. Identity, you select the Facebook and the Instagram account of your clients to make sure to run the ads through the right profile. Here we make sure that we have selected create ad. It does select automatically. We don't want to use an existing post or use a Creative Hub mockup. We are going to be creating the ad from scratch. So we just have create ad here selected. Manual upload, single image or video, keep that. Turn off multi-advertiser ads. Again, one of the expansions that Meta tries to force down your throat. If you have it on, it's going to begin showing together with other ads, and we don't want that. We want people to see our ads on its own. Destination, that's going to be whatever golf brand we are working with in this case. I'm just going to put my agency's website to keep stuff simple. Display link, this is the actual link that the person is going to see. So it's not going to be the link that people actually go to, but if you have a pretty complicated URL, let's say this one would be curve.no/product category golf/apparel/clubs, something like that. We want to keep it much simpler. You can write out your own display link to give people a bit of certainty in where they are going to be landing when they actually click on the ad. So in this case, I would just do clubs, for example. Super informative, descriptive. People understand exactly where they are going to be sent. No phone number, because we don't want people to be calling us. We want people to go on the website and actually purchase the product. So keep that blank. Ad creative, here is where we actually upload the ad creative. So give me a sec and I will get that done. So just downloaded the creatives I showed you guys earlier in Figma. So you go into upload, image ad, upload, then you find those on your computer, you select them, you click open, and now we just wait for Meta to actually upload our files. Once it's done, you just select the first one, click next, text. And here we will be adding the actual primary text. So this is the ad copy for our ad. So in here, the format we use is to have some kind of attention grabbing headline. Then you have a couple different USPs, and at the end you have a CTA or a call to action. So we keep it simple. We always follow the exact same strategy and structure for the primary text. So this ad is going to be for people with short hands and who are playing golf. Again, I'm just making up these angles here, but let's use that as an example to challenge myself a little bit. So the headline could be calling out golfers with short hands. That is our headline. Then we need to find some kind of emoji related to golf. I would probably use this one. Let's put that at the end here, actually, like this. Then we have a couple different USPs. So we want to explain why people should buy our product. USA's first clubs developed specifically for people with short hands. Next could be, find the emojis later, but it could be improves driving range by 23% on average. We always want to use some math if we have any. And then the last one could be cheaper than your normal set of clubs. Whatever. For example, you get the point. These USPs will come from the market research that you did earlier. So when we went through the creative development process, we went through the creative strategy one pager where you do all the research into the product, why it's special, why it's different. So you would just use the main selling points here as USPs. Find some matching emojis. I'm just going to use this one right now to keep stuff simple for the video. And at the end, we want to have some kind of CTA. Get yours today. Click the link below. For example, keep it again super simple. Don't overthink this part. If the creative is good, the copy doesn't really matter. Again, let's add an emoji. Emojis depend on kind of the brand image that you're working with. If you're working with a super minimalistic, high-end, high-tech brand, you probably don't want to use emojis. This one is more like playful, kind of, youthful. Then they are okay with using emojis and getting slightly higher click-through rates using that. You have also some, suggestions from Meta. You can read through those. If any of them speak to you and feel like a good copy, you can add that as an alternative. I'm not going to do that because usually they are pretty bad. Headline, keep that just blank. It only shows on a tiny fraction of the placement, so no really point in adding a headline. Same with the advantage creative text generation. Disable that description, keep that off as well. And then the call to action is whatever is related to your product. So in this case, we want people to shop. So it should be something like order now. If you are working with a lead gen brand, it could be apply now or get a quote today, whatever the matching call to action is for your ad. Image generation, keep all of this off. If you turn it on, it's going to begin doing changes on its own, like adding text on top and kind of cropping and adding extra background image using AI generation. So if it automatically enables any of those, turn those off. Done. This is it for our ad setup. We have the copy. As you can see now, it appears right here. We now have the creative. When you click order now, we are going to be sent to our product page to actually buy the item. So stuff is good to launch. Since we have 3 variants, the thing you would do here is to just click on these 3 ads, click duplicate, and then replace the creative, the image itself, with those other images. So you would have 1 campaign, 1 ad set, and 3 images within here, but keep the copy the same. Just replace the creatives. If you have more batches of content, you just create new ad sets under here with testing 1 batch of content in 1 ad set. So I hope this video was valuable and explains how I do the service delivery at my own agency. Again, this is what allowed me to scale to 100K a month within a year of me being stuck at 10K a month. Just understanding exactly how to deliver this service and doing it consistently, keeping clients for 9+ months, charging crazy performance deals. If you want help with any of this, with setting these systems up in your own agency, send me a DM on Instagram. Let's talk about it. I help other agencies on the side because I'm still actively running my own agency. So I don't do any like course selling as my main business. I still run the agency, but I do, as I said, help other agencies on the side. So if you want help with scaling your agency, DM me on Instagram. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments, and thank you for watching.